welcome. I'm glad you made it out to our February event. It's the last day of February, so it's really weird to say, hey, welcome to the February meetup, even though tomorrow's March. So, you know, for announcements, we want to thank Pluralsight for sponsoring this evening, providing this beautiful venue space and a Zoom room. We want to thank Forge. It's a Forge meetup. Forge provided pizzas. Forge Utah. If you haven't joined the Forge Utah Slack, you should. If you would like to know how to do that, just find me and I will get you the invite. I just have you enter your email on my phone and then it sends you an invite email and then you can be part of the Forge Utah Slack. It's a great Slack community. It's got an active jobs channel, active machine learning channel, active data engineering channel, and a really great local events channel where they share every single event that happens in Utah under the sun. I share half of them, so I know. And if your company's hiring, you can go ahead and post that on the jobs channel. We really like that it's a very active job aggregator, kind of like a job board that's free. And with that, if anybody's hiring and you'd like to share, I will turn the floor over to you. Does anybody have any jobs, or if you're looking for jobs, feel like you want to share? You could just yell, but I'll give you a mic.
Yeah, I'm Caleb Skidmore from Ancestry. We're hiring QA for our machine learning pipelines. So it'll be a senior QA position on the pipelines. And if you want to talk to me afterward, I'll be here.
Thank you. Anybody else? Cool. Cool. Trying to think of what my other, if you would like to speak at one of our future machine learning meetups or any other Forge meetup, feel free to come find me or reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Slack. Or you can jump onto one of my Twitch streams, or you could text me if you have my phone number, but that would be a little creepy because I haven't given you my phone number. And I would probably ignore the text. So we're always looking for people to share what they've learned, any cool projects, any open source stuff, anything you think is fun, we'll take it and we'll let you speak about it at any one of our fabulous meetups that I probably run. And then the last announcement is that we will have a meetup event next month on the 28th. It will be at MX. It's about natural language processing. I'm doing some kind of a deep dive into something. I forgot what, it's on a slide that I don't have in front of me. So if you want to come hear Chris Broso, I think Chris Brusso talk about it. It'll be next month at MX, and that's all I have for announcements. So you're good to go, Jake.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. If you want to toggle that to red, there's a button. Yeah, awesome. Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate you being active in the community. I appreciate having people to speak to, so thank you. Some house rules. We've got some mics here. Those are going to be used at the end of the meeting when we have a Q&A section. Let me flip over to the agenda really quick so you can get an overview of how we're going to walk through the presentation today. Like you see at the end, Q&A. So we've got some mics. Maybe we'll use them, maybe we won't. All you have to do to enable it to be able to speak, which is helpful to our remote friends. We've got about 6 up. We've got 8 now. Cool, numbers are climbing. Remotely with us, the mics help us allow them to hear what we're saying. So, and then bathrooms are through this door. However, we do have guardrails kind of corralling us to this area. And so don't go past those ropes, but there are bathrooms and water fountains if you need it. Other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So as a quick run through for today's presentation, starting off with introductions, that'll be in my next slide. I wanna introduce the team and point out that we're hiring. If you are a student who has maybe their junior semester under their belt or are stepping into junior year, this might be a really good opportunity. And if you have friends, maybe you yourself are not at school right now, but if you have friends, it's going to be a really good opportunity. It's going to be with me and my team. Then we're going to go into MLOps in the industry. What is that? What are we seeing? What is MLOps at Pluralsight? And then rifle through some tips that I think will be helpful in the case that you are hoping to start an MLOps team at your organization. Then we'll do Q&A and networking. You know, we have the building until about 8:30, so we're welcome to hang out here, chat, and interchange contact information, whatever. So by way of an introduction, this is my team. Andrew should be coming by. I don't know, he might not make it, but there's Andrew, Aaron, and Jake. Jake is myself. If I didn't give the intro at the beginning, hi, I'm Jake Lyman. I'm an MLOps engineer at Pluralsight. We're here in the building. And this is my lovely team. And perhaps we might see your face here at the bottom. If you're interested in an internship, insert face there. And we've got 20 plus years in the data engineering, data science, data analytics space, and have served in a number of roles, especially here at Pluralsight. So a cool little infographic on our team's heritage. This team, these team members have been through a number of teams at Pluralsight where 5 years ago, our team members came into Pluralsight with the data engineering team, which we still have a data engineering team. But since then, we've been carved away and split up into different teams that were needed given the business's priorities, where data engineering eventually became data engineering and operations, a little bit more larger group, but then got split into subset teams, data engineering being one, but also data operations, data ops. And we were data ops engineers over there. Aaron and Andrew joined the team back 5 years or so ago in the data engineering era. I joined in the data ops era. And again, kind of history repeated itself. We had to split up that team to meet the needs of the business, where one side of our team, this crew was about 7 people large, 1 director, 6 engineers. 3 of the engineers focused on helping enable our data science teams, and the other 3 helped enable our data platform. I sat on the side that helped enable our data science teams, and that side of the team got carved away and established as the MLOps team at Pluralsight. And we are embedded on the central data science and machine learning team here at Pluralsight, and it's been about a year or so since that formalization happened, which has been a great experience. Yeah, that's us. Going into like MLOps in the industry, this is something that I wanted to talk about because this is kind of a new discipline, right? We have had data scientists, we've had machine learning engineers, and now we're seeing a need for a new persona to help divvy out the responsibilities here. And there's a lot of things that are changing with this, right? MLOps in the industry, what we're seeing as a common trends is that it aspires to do for data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence what DevOps did for software engineering. And if you're new to the MLOps space, a precursor to that, it's machine learning operations. And it's a presently evolving discipline that hopefully us as a community can learn more about as we bring these teams into our companies and start seeing more of these roles. I know a few of you in the audience have MLOps engineers at your company. I know some of you are MLOps engineers yourselves, but not everybody's like that, and that's okay. Because, oh, this is a slide I wanted to show you guys, is if you were here at the last meetup, I asked this question: do you have MLOps engineers or an MLOps team? On the right side, that's the results from that survey. Take it with a grain of salt, right? There was about 40 people there, maybe 30 of which responded. It's cool to see that, yeah, we're seeing some MLOps engineers come into the space. No, and then kind of, you know, like I understand how awkward that spot might be, but it's really cool to see this. Alongside that, I asked the same question: in the subreddit, the data science subreddit, which I'm a huge Redditor. I love it. Data science is a good subreddit to join. And we had, I think I gave a third option. I wish I would have given the kind of option, but I didn't think ahead far enough when I gave that poll. But a similar trend, right? We have a lot of people who unfortunately don't have MLOps in their space, but we have quite a few who do. And that's encouraging, I think, because it's an important space and discipline to have. And if some of you have seen my blog, you might have seen this graph before about MLOps. I've written about it, and it's the next 2 slides after this are going to go into this cycle a little bit deeper about what MLOps is, where is its focus. But MLOps is kind of, think about this 3-phase infinity symbol, where MLOps is over and has purview into the entire ML lifecycle, from design to ongoing operations and everything in between. But there's not one way to do MLOps. There's a series of best practices and tools that are coming together that are honing in on like some consistency, but that's not always going to be the case for each and every team, every company. MLOps is, I like this tagline. MLOps is a language, framework, platform, and infrastructure agnostic practice. How do you do machine learning at scale? How do you do data science at scale? And there's a lot of different tools that you can use that might fit your company's needs better or best for your needs. One thing that we're going to go into this slide deck next, which is like, where is MLOps as a discipline able to uniquely add value to the ML lifecycle? But before I get into that, I did want to talk about the CRISP MLQ process model, which, if you haven't seen this before, you might have ran into its precursor, the CRISP DM, which is, that stands for like cross-industry standard process for machine learning with quality assurance. There's a precursor called CRISP DM. The DM was data mining, I believe. And this was built based off of a research paper to try and like go through the different phases of the ML lifecycle. And I've found it to be one of the best graphs out there to like show this lifecycle. And it was found at MLOps.org, like the previous graph. And on top of this, this is the graph that I really wanted to show for MLOps, where we've had this life cycle. We've had a lot of people put together data science models in notebooks or our markdown documents or just straight up scripts. And then it's like, okay, how do you make that operational and scale? How do you put that into production? And that's where kind of MLOps was birthed, is how do you take these things and put it somewhere that's going to scale, not break, be efficient, and manageable. And this is called the MLOps stack. You'll find it on a couple of articles, but not a ton. But when I came across it at MLOps.org, I encourage you to check out that website if you're interested in learning more about MLOps. I thought this was super helpful to see, okay, hey, this is where we might be able to focus some of our cycles as a team into these different areas. And that's what we did actually when we first got formalized as the MLOps team at Pluralsight. We actually read through all of the docs on this website to try and educate ourselves on current industry trends. And when we found this gave us a really good roadmap of, okay, hey, we have a lot of these different pieces, but do we have a metadata store? Do we have a good feature store? Are we happy with it? How's our continuous integration and continuous training ML pipeline orchestration? And it's actually a diagram that I'd recommend to any of you to hold to share with your teams, and maybe walk through some of the different steps and where you might be able to improve on. With that, so MLOps in the industry was the last couple of slides. Here I want to talk a little bit more about MLOps at Pluralsight. At Pluralsight, we've got 3 personas in our data science and machine learning team. We've got data scientists, we have machine learning engineers, and we have MLOps engineers. Data scientists and machine learning engineers have been around for quite a while at Pluralsight. MLOps engineers, rather new as of a year ago. And your company might have these titles as well. Or you might be, you might just have a data science title, just a data scientist, and that's fine. I definitely have seen those positions where everything is kind of like packed into one role, where you're interfacing with stakeholders, you're coding up the model, then you're going to be putting it into production and integrating it with the software of your company, and then you're going to continue to maintain it. That's a lot. Pluralsight, we've seen that. That's a lot for one person to take on. So we've created personas over time where it's like, all right, for us here at Pluralsight, I can speak more to the MLOps engineering side of the house, but as far as I have seen in the past, data scientists have exposure to our stakeholders, and they are putting together proofs of concepts of how can we do data science at Pluralsight, and how can we solve a problem smarter, or they might get approached by a specific team at Pluralsight. They're working closely with them and putting together models. After which, on the product side, we have machine learning engineers who pair closely with our data scientists to try and integrate models that have been vetted and deemed worthy to put into production. And after which, we have MLOps engineers to pair with those two to help ensure that, hey, how do we deploy the infrastructure for this model in a way that it's going to scale and be easier to manage? And how do we make that repeatable for other people to perhaps use as a blueprint for when they run into a similar problem, as in like other data scientists, other MLEs. We've got about 30 team members at Pluralsight on the data science and machine learning team, all of which, fit into these different personas. A fourth persona being a leader, of the different groups. Like we've got Andrew, who just walked in. Andrew's this guy right here waving his hand. He's the leader over our MLOps crew. Then we have other leaders over data science, and I don't think we have a leader over machine learning engineers, but we do have a principal machine learning engineer. So taking a step further into this, what is an MLOps engineer at Pluralsight? One thing I want to know about MLOps engineers at Pluralsight, we've drawn the line where MLOps engineers, we don't train models. We don't train data science machine learning models because that's not our purview. If you remember, I was mentioning a few minutes ago about how there's so much that needs to be done for these things to work well that it's hard for just one person to do all of it. It's nice to carve out responsibilities. And all of us have done that in the past, but we've enjoyed stepping into a role where we can help enable our peers who are data scientists and machine learning engineers develop those models and deploy those models in a way that's manageable for them. And we aim as a team to take data science, machine learning, and AI models and systems from conception to prototype to production as fast as possible. As fast as possible might be months to a year, but we're trying to do that quick. Improve the process for model experimentation, development, and deployment, and reduce the associated risk and increase the quality and visibility of these models. And if you look back to that previous graph that I showed, the MLOps stack, the CRISP ML-Q process model, you can see MLOps has a hand from the beginning all the way to the end and back and forth with these 3 points, at least here at Pluralsight. So if we're not training models, what do we do as MLOps engineers? A lot of that depends on priorities. But these are some example projects that we've taken on over the past year, where a lot of it has been putting together infrastructure for model deployments. One of our engineers worked a long time on an ECS construct that deployed several of our TensorFlow models. And we worked for a long time on crafting good development environments for our data scientists to work out of. For example, you've got your laptop, and a lot of people are happy just training a model on their laptop, their local hardware. Perhaps you have some in-house servers. We're huge fans of AWS, and we, for a long time, were using SageMaker and deploying SageMakers for our data scientists to work out of. And that was fine for a period. SageMaker is the service from AWS. It's their machine learning suite, and it offers a ton of tools we didn't take advantage of that tool chain as much as we could have. We really wanted the SageMaker notebook instances, eventually transitioned off of those into just vanilla EC2 instances that are really beefy and can help our data scientists just model and create experiments, train models, and have everything in a consistent place that, yeah, had the hardware to do so. But other things that we've been doing is setting up POCs, proofs of concepts of new tools that we've had the opportunity to identify an area where we're weak in that whole ML lifecycle. So one of which was ClearML. You might have seen ClearML. We've been using this for our experiment tracking, for our MLEs and data scientists to be able to track the difference from one model versus another, the weights and how it performed. That's been really cool. Label Studio is a recent one that we put together so that our data scientists could have a tool to enable stakeholders to label data so that they can use that to inform their current project. And we stood those up, and those are going to be vetted and perhaps put into a more generally available tool to the rest of our teams. And then, yeah, you know, I'm beating this to death, but yeah, those are some of the examples of things that we've worked on. We, the types of tools that we work and use is infrastructure as code tools is a lot of it. So the AWS CDK is a tool that we are using right now for our teams to deploy infrastructure. We were really big fans of Terraform before in our data ops world, but we've transitioned to AWS CDK. GitLab, CI/CD, Ansible, anything that we can use to do infrastructure as code better is a lot of where we spent our time. And AWS is kind of a given with all of that. And then some tips on how you might be able to do MLOps at your organization. I have 3 little tips, and they're, you know, I think they are pretty informed given our past year experience. Number 1 is prioritize and iterate. You've seen how big, how many things are in that diagram I shared, the MLOps stack. Not only like where can MLOps help, but you know, the whole ML lifecycle. That's a lot to take on as maybe a startup or a new MLOps team. So prioritize and iterate. Find something that you're weak on, and perhaps you have a new initiative at your company that is gonna be, I don't know, using like data labeling, for example, like we had, and we had to stand up a new tool that was gonna be helpful for us then. And then you can use that as a way to further flesh out your tool chain throughout that MLOps stack. Secondly, choose the tools carefully. Our team has found that we've had so many tools in our tech stack that it's really hard to manage the knowledge and hire for that knowledge, where it's not a trivial matter for us when we choose to add a new technology. We talk about that a lot. And a good example that we've recently had is one of our MLEs went through the tools that was interesting to him and his peers that were MLOps centric, that were ML platforms, 4 of which were these: ClearML, BentoML, MLEM, MLflow. We went through, looked through all of them, and we decided on ClearML. We're gonna give that a shot, and the MLOps engineers are gonna put up a POC of it, and we're gonna see how we like that. And for so far, Andrew, I don't know, you can tell differently, but they've liked it, we've liked it, and that's our next project after we finish some things that we've been working on. But some criteria that we've used, this is probably criteria you use as well, it's kind of a given. Open source is really important to us, not only because it's free, but because it comes with a very large community that keeps it active and maintained. Good documentation, language support, framework support. We're a huge fan of TensorFlow on our team, so that's an important part for when we're choosing tools, how they might fit in with our current tool chain. The last one is learn from others, connect with me on LinkedIn, peers here. I also, like I said, I'm a Reddit fan. I like our MLOps. It's a small community right now, but it's actually pretty active for how small it is. And then like Mariah said, MLOps.community. So that's it. That's all I had for my presentation. That's how we're using MLOps at Pluralsight in a way. And yeah, this QR code, you can add me on LinkedIn, but other than that, we've got some time to do questions and then we'll break for networking. If you've got a mic, or you can raise your hand and I'll throw it. Could we pass the, you got it? Awesome, cool. Andrew, actually, would you be interested in coming up? We can share the mic too. By the way, like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, if you're a student who is looking to get into MLOps, Andrew's the guy to chat with after this meeting. Andrew, you want to give a quick intro?
To myself or to the role? Yeah, sorry to come in late. I've got a little dude that has been dealing with some asthma. So I'm the director of, my official title is DSML Infrastructure and Model Operations, but no one wants to say that. So we just say MLOps. But I started out on a senior data engineering track. Was actually working with that dude right there, Casey. So he's Pluralsight alumni, and ultimately was deciding about whether or not I wanted to pursue more of a career on like the ever increasing capability of the SQL side of things, and like go down the DBT path with more data engineering, or do more of like the infrastructure role, and then instead just like pulled a right hook and went into management in the data operations space. Yeah, it was interesting. I learned that management is not engineering. It's some interesting amalgamation of that plus other things. And it's been a great journey. Anyway, we landed in MLOps because that was kind of half of our team's responsibility. And we found that it was really hard for us to focus on all of our critical data systems like Kafka and Snowflake, et cetera, and give those all the love that they needed. Our data science infrastructure wasn't getting a lot of love. So we decided to dedicate a team specifically to that use case. And anyway, Jake was gracious enough to come along on the journey. I don't know if I gave him much choice, but I think he's hopefully enjoying it. So anyway.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming. We saw a question in the back, I believe. Go for it.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah. Make sure it's toggled to green. Green. Green means go. Yeah.
So am I coming in right now? We're looking at model monitoring very specifically, but there's like a million tools for doing it. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts, if you guys had looked at different model monitoring tools and, gone through that vetting process and what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so one thing that we've been doing recently for monitoring, not necessarily modeling in general, New Relic has been a really helpful tool for us to be able to assess some of our deployments and what their state is. And it's open source. We used it today. One of our servers got toppled and we were able to identify the logs. Why is that an issue? And quickly redeploy that with enhanced size. As far as model monitoring, ClearML does model monitoring, but we haven't utilized that tool yet. That's one I'd recommend is ClearML, because we've enjoyed the experimentations part of that platform so much. We're going to hold on to it most likely, and then we're going to see if we can utilize some of those other tools. ClearML is open source, but it does come with a managed service. So you can, if your company has the cash, right, you can pay for that overhead to be managed by them. Is there any thoughts you'd like to add to that?
Sure, I'll add a few.
Yeah.
I think model monitoring is a really broad domain because ultimately your model sits at the intersection of data and some, production employment. And so I guess like it really depends on also what you want to model or monitor. Are you wanting to monitor, whether or not the data is drifting? Are you wanting to monitor, just like, is the model up, like, traditional API endpoint monitoring, that kind of stuff? Like, what's the specific challenge?
Well, it's been kind of a general thing. Concept drift and data drift is one of the things we're focusing on specifically, but we've been trying to vet exactly the different things we do want to monitor in production as well. So, but mostly just making sure our models are performing well and paying attention to the different variables that can impact that.
Yeah, I think we were pretty mature on our typical application performance monitoring applications there. When it comes to some of the more model performance, et cetera, like that's where ClearML really has been helpful in the model training and looking at some of those metrics. But also, I think in some ways we cheat a little bit. I don't know if Jake alluded to the fact that there's a bandit in our architecture, and we lean on that bandit a lot to make sure that it is getting the right model to a user, for example, for recommendations. So it can learn which models are performing the best through its explore exploit, strategy that it uses, and that helps out as well. So,
yeah, of course. Let's see, we got a question in the back. You can pass the mic to the next person who brought up the hand. Yeah, let's hear.
I was curious how the data engineering tasks are divvied up among your data science team. Are they mostly handled by MLOps, or are they pretty spread across the team members?
I had a hard time hearing, but you're curious about how the data engineering tasks are handled by the data science team. Is it by MLOps or some other? Is that the right question?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, we have a data engineering team dedicated to that, and they're doing data engineering pipelines. We don't touch that so much anymore. Just today we were talking about how one of our teammates, Aaron, you saw on the slide, he had to do a one-on-one call with one of our data engineers who isn't as savvy on AWS, and he's working on a data pipeline for our current team, the data science machine learning team that we pair with daily. So yeah, it's mostly the data engineering crew at this point. So great question, thanks.
Just two questions. So are you doing any Bayesian modeling or working with any Bayesian models?
I'm not.
Okay. All right. Bummer. So the other question was, are you programming or are you just tying together these tools? And if you're programming, writing code, what languages do you use? And are there any languages that you avoid?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm sure we've got a couple of things to talk about here, but so we're coding, right, daily, but the type of programming that we're doing is a little bit different than maybe a software engineer. So we're writing infrastructure as code, and the tools that we've used for that in a couple of areas is we're using the AWS CDK, and you can employ that using either 5 languages. Our chosen language for that is TypeScript. You can do Python for your CDK deployments. We've gone back and forth on whether or not we want to do TypeScript versus Python. I was on the Python train for a really long time because it's easier to hire in this data science space for Python users. However, we chose TypeScript more as an informed decision from our peers in DevOps, but also, we came to terms. Andrew had to beat me on the head with a stick for a while versus Python and TypeScript. And the reason being is TypeScript, it's easier to transpile that into the different languages that CDK supports, one of which is Python. So for example, DevOps, right? They are supporting the entire company, and there's different, experienced teams, software engineering teams who have their preferred languages. TypeScript was important to them because it can suit those other languages. So TypeScript was one that we're using these days. Other languages that we're using, there's a few others, but let me hand the mic.
Yeah, it was hard for us to let go of Terraform, I think, for our infrastructure as code. But ultimately, we got a lot of flexibility from TypeScript. And TypeScript has that ability to transpile. We have a centralized library for our CDK called PS CDK, and that is useful across the company, across all the bounded contexts, so that the DevOps engineers can kind of write it once. And whether a team is using .NET or JavaScript or Python, whatever their BC may be backed on, they can deploy their own infrastructure using those constructs. So it's a pretty cool use case. I did find myself last week writing some Golang. It was an interesting use case. We deployed ClearML in a private subnet, and I wanted a health check against it. And I was thinking through the different ways that we could do that. And New Relic had a way that you could run local runners on a Kubernetes cluster to be able to like poke that cluster, but you couldn't poke it from the public internet. But I pinged our teams. They didn't seem super stoked on taking on that project at the moment and like bringing up that infrastructure. So I took it as an opportunity to flex my Golang muscle and write like a small binary that could poke that endpoint and then send alerts to New Relic or its data to New Relic. So, you know, I find that the MLOps tech stack looks a lot more like infrastructure as code, at least for our team, as well as, you know, more of the traditional DevOps toolkits. Unfortunately, we don't get the option too often to flex into Python. But we wrote a lot of Python as data engineers and as analysts. And so I don't know, it's a hard one because it's so centric to data science. And I just wish there was one language to unify them all.
One to rule them all. That's a great question. Another thing that I did want to add to that is some of the other tools that we use, not necessarily per like programming languages. Like he said, Python was something that we preferred. That's a preferred language on our data science and machine learning team here at Pluralsight. Other tools that are important to us here on the MLOps team, AWS, Linux, Bash. We're using Ansible to help configure servers. Yeah.
YAML.
Lots of YAML.
Not programming language. I'll argue with you about it, but it is the language we write the most.
Quite a bit of YAML. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for the question. I saw the mic got passed. Oh, wait. So who's next?
Yeah, over here.
Okay.
So I've had trouble getting our organization to use, we're on Weights and Biases, which is a paid version of ClearML. So I'm curious, in your organization, what is the main use case for ClearML that like made you want to look for one of these services, and who's asking for it? Is it coming from engineering, from management, from data scientists?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Andrew's probably got a pretty good informed, well, I won't speak to that, but I know you specifically have been in the procurement scene as a leader, and that you specifically looked into weights and bias, ClearML and whatnot.
Yeah. Why ClearML over weights and biases, and what problem did it solve? How did we arrive at the solution? The true story is, I think people were pretty happy. You know, machine learning and data science have been pretty solid here at Pluralsight, and we've had a lot of capability around it for, I don't know, about 4 years now. And so some of the senior MLEs, I think, were pretty happy with where things were at. But one of the senior MLEs, we have a hackathon that we do here. And as part of that hackathon, instead of doing the normal hackathon project, he decided he was going to take some liberties and do his hackathon project. And he decided to hack on what was out there in the experiment management space and kind of the automated gathering of metrics. And saw that the needle had really moved. This team, and I guess Pluralsight in general, has a pretty open door policy to open source technologies. Given the financial environment that is present in 2023 for most businesses, like SaaS procurement is pretty challenging. So I would say, to answer your question, like it was motivated by engineering. They wanted it because they actually saw that it saved them a significant amount of time. And ClearML was a great candidate because it was a product that worked out of the box. It was available open source. And, I've been having the conversations about purchasing the SaaS solution so that we don't have to use engineering hours to manage that. But I think right now, given the headwinds that are out there financially, we're probably going to be using engineering hours to manage it here for a bit. So, so if you already have weights and biases and it's procured, then that's pretty cool. Maybe keep that on lock, or at least figure out how to reallocate those dollars.
I love it. I came from data science using it, so I'm
Oh,
curious
yeah.
who's, what if you said the data engineers are ones asking for it, like.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Sorry, machine learning engineers. I apologize. Yeah, machine learning engineers. If I misspoke, it's just because sleep wasn't great last night. But yeah, it's the machine learning engineers. And the reason why they wanted it is because we're working on a project right now that is forcing us to rapidly iterate across a bunch of different large language models. And we didn't just want to evaluate performance for those models at like a global accuracy level, but we wanted to be able to dig into our hierarchy of tags and labels, the way we tag our content here at Pluralsight, and be able to look at how the model was performing broadly across the tags and be able to compare that across model runs. Is the performance really good for this programming language, but maybe it's falling off for this programming language, and be able to like make the evaluation on that basis instead of just like a global, oh, look, like the accuracy went up. So.
Bit of a related question. So anytime you're putting together a new business unit, I mean, it's going to entail a heavy dose of expenditure, right? Through personnel, computing resources, just time. So what are the specific approaches you're using to assess value creation? I mean, are there specific KPIs you're using? How do you go about justifying your existence?
man, great question. You might have a better answer for this as a leader, but
I'm happy to let you take it and I can fill in.
yeah, absolutely. So, we have a leadership team on our data science machine learning team that has been interested in investing in this new space, MLOps, to make their lives easier, their teams easier. And we were prior team, right? Like I said, with our heritage data ops supporting that. They wanted to get a little bit more juice out of us and brought us closer, kind of embedded us on the data science machine learning team. So as far as proving our value, I think that's left to be done. We've been with the company, we've been with the central team for a year now, had their grace to invest in us. And now we're just iterating through several OKRs that are important to the business and helping out wherever possible. Metrics as to how are we ascertaining whether or not that value is being milked out and returned. Good question. I don't know. How are you looking at it as a leader?
It's a great question. I think this is actually a really big question in data science and machine learning right now broadly, right? Because the question is, you have a bunch of individuals on average making six-figure salaries, maybe high six-figure salaries, and they're doing experiments. Maybe you're seeing them work on recommendations or search or different things like that, but at the same time, some of those things are just becoming table stakes. People won't buy a product if it doesn't at least have like reasonable search, or no one is wowed when you show up at a product and it recommends things for you. That's just table stakes. And so I think in general, one of the things that the DSML team broadly that we report into has been working on is trying to figure out what those KRs are, what those levers and switches are that we're really enabling for the business. And it's challenging because unless you are a product that is a smart product, right? Like your product is actually the machine learning model. It's really hard to tie what you're doing to revenue, particularly like Pluralsight, right? Like Pluralsight has been around for a while now, right? It's not some new fresh startup. We've got a, I mean, I should know exactly when we were founded, but I'm pretty sure we're coming up on 20 years here now. And so, so much of how the business learned to do their accounting and those types of things predate, I think, a lot of the data world. So I think this is a big question. It's not just something at our level. It's something that I regularly hear my manager, the VP of data science and machine learning, talk about and we're thinking about. And one of the things that we're really doing is we're starting to create a lot of dashboards and metrics and have more engaging conversations with our C-suite, our executives, and our product managers. And there's been a lot of great dividends that have come out of that. But a lot of that has really been enabled by some of the excitement around these large language learning models like ChatGPT, et cetera, and how they're changing the marketplace. So I think to your question, like, I don't have a great answer to that, but it is something that we're hyper aware of and trying to figure out. And if you have a great answer, I'd love to hear it after. So.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that we have been doing recently is actually our DSML, what is it called? That dashboard Peyton's putting together, right? It's
Yeah. Why don't you tell me
first stab that we're taking at it? Yeah, so when we brought on as MLOps within the data science machine learning team, this was a big unknown to our VP. It's just like, she would come to us and be like, I don't even know how many models we have in production, when were they last updated, who is consuming those models. And that's, not being able to understand just those questions makes it really hard to ascertain value. And that's been an initiative that's been kind of put onto one of our data scientists to aggregate data sets of who is using his team's models. And we're trying to make a flagship dashboard that can then be replicated to our other teams. Or, speaking vaguely here, but our data science machine learning team is kind of broken up into 4 groups. And we pair specifically with one of the largest groups there, and that flagship dashboard, right, will get evangelized to those other teams. Try and bring that data in so that our VP can see, okay, some of those basic questions that she can bring to her leadership, which is how many models, how often have they been updated, what improvements and metrics can be shown. And that I think gets us a little bit closer to the dollars, but it's another step at that point to solve for.
Yeah, one of the things I actually just saw in the most recent iteration of the dashboard was monthly active users, and then a little trend arrow that was like pointing up or down and like showed the delta from like the previous time period. So starting to like look at number of teams that we're actually impacting here at Pluralsight and are using, our various endpoints and models, et cetera. I guess my metrics personally for the MLOps team, I can speak to those. Like, it's in general like a reduction of I don't know how to articulate this better, but like WTFs per minute, right? Like from the data scientists and the machine learning engineers. We really are very focused on helping them have the tools that they need to be able to do things. And so much of it for our team is directly driven by listening to them, taking a product focused mindset, seeing what solutions we can set up that actually help solve their problem, and then relying on them to loudly praise the solutions that we have stood up to my manager and to our peers in the organization. And like, so far, I feel like we've been pretty successful at that. Maybe we'll have more metrics, right? But like, we've been getting a lot of mileage out of Posit Connect and like enabling Streamlit dashboards lately. Once the fanfare around Posit and Streamlit dies down, we'll have to figure out like what our next one-trick pony is. So.
Thanks. Okay, so maybe one more question and we'll break up for just general networking, and you're welcome to come up and ask other questions. So is there one more? Yeah. No worries.
Yeah. So my question is, when do you think it makes sense for a company to hire an MLOps engineer? Is it at a certain number of models being, running, certain number of data scientists making models, certain number of mistakes? And would it ever make sense to hire an MLOps engineer before any models are deployed, right? In the sense of like trying to do it right from the first place, or does it always make sense to wait until there are a certain amount of models or data scientists working on models?
Yeah, I think the catch-all question, it depends. But one thing that I feel like you specifically asked that question of, does it make sense to hire an MLOps engineer right at the beginning before you have models? Maybe this is a controversial approach, but for me, I would say no. That's kind of like different from like a data engineer, right? Where it's like, how do you do data science without data engineering, proper data engineering, data sets? You can't. Or you learn the hard way that that's tricky. So like that's a different, case. But with MLOps engineers, I think there's something to be said about having that initial data scientist or MLE to identify and work through several models that the company finds important to them. And, who knows, maybe they're just a lone soldier out there and they're doing all of it in Jupyter notebooks and that's working, or they have a Streamlit dashboard, but then that's being hard and difficult. I think at that point, you start to see the value of hiring someone net new who is specialized in helping out in those pain point areas that maybe a data scientist isn't specifically skilled or apt in. So that to that point, I'd say, it kind of depends when you hire them, but I wouldn't hire them right away. And do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have the answer for you, but like maybe just Pluralsight's story would be illustrative of like how on earth we got here having MLOps engineer roles. Way back when we started out with data scientists, and those data scientists got an EC2 instance. It was named Blurry, and they just piled all the data scientists on it, and the IT team set it up, and that's where they lived until they started to run into resource contention issues. And by then, we had a data engineering team, and those data engineers also did cloud things. And so the data scientists were so fed up with Blurry that they took a chance on the data engineering team providing something better. And we got them onto some SageMaker notebook instances, but like hacked ones so they could like SSH into them and do some other stuff, not just a vanilla notebook interface. From there, the data engineering team continued to evolve, and it got a data operations function to really be able to handle some of the large data infrastructure. In general, I think we use data operations as a synonym for data platform engineer. And I think you could call MLOps at Pluralsight a synonym for machine learning platform engineer. And so we went down the road that way. A team spun out of there over to our technology org, and that's DSML. And they started out with some data scientists and ended up getting some DevOps support because they were working on application-specific projects. They grew that, got some of that infrastructure, and then eventually part of data operations, our team broke off and created MLOps underneath DSML. And so, I think what I see is, I see that with some solid data scientists and some solid machine learning engineers or data engineers, you can really make it down the road quite far. And you don't really need a machine learning platform engineer until you've got a pretty developed use case and you're really looking at how you scale. You've already vetted kind of the value prop with the business because they're willing to invest in some of those specialized roles.
Awesome, thanks. Really good question. Okay, so Mariah, do you have any announcements that you'd like to make before we break? Should I double check? Looks like it's a no. Come back next month. I believe Chris in the back, he's going to be speaking on NLP, peeling the layers. I saw the title, but okay. There you go, guys. What's the date on that? Okay, 28th of March for those who are remote. Hope you can hear that. Tune in next time. And then for the rest of us, let's go ahead and just break and hang out for the next hour, 30 minutes. Thanks.